balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic. Providing context on today's events, this is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I would say happy Monday, but I don't think it's happy for some people, especially those hit by Hurricane Helene. By the way, speaking about that, we still have not heard from the venerable Buddy Weiser, who lives in North Carolina, and North Carolina was hit with a crap ton of rain. And I'm not saying that by, I-40 apparently got wiped out, got part of it wiped out in sections, because of all the rain. I know there's been several areas in Western North Carolina that are just flooded out, completely flooded out. And so, obviously, I mean, about the only thing that we can really do is pray for Buddy for now until we can hear from him again. I know there's still millions without power, and he may very well be one of those millions, being without power. But, that being said, I did want to bring attention to a list, a website that I was pointed at by the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro by all accounts. This is a website, and the link is in the show notes, in the description of the video, so you can go and take a look at that and get it. It's the very first one. But these are some ways that you can donate and help flood victims in Western North Carolina if you are able to. They've got several possibilities here. You can see, here's a photo of like someplace, I don't even know where it is, but totally flooded out. They've got flying helicopters that they're flying stuff in to help people out. There's a couple of different ones there. There's a GoFundMe there to support Hope Mill. Hope Mill is helicopters dropping relief in. And then we have Hurricane Helene Airlift Relief. That one's got a dedicated Facebook page. There's links all inside this thing. There's government-led relief, the Buncombe, or I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, county government. There's some things there, and then they also have some local verified groups, Swannanoa, Asheville area, and the request is from them, Hearts with Hands is request for them is financial donations. Manna Food Bank in Asheville has got some stuff. You can give money to the food bank online. There's just a list of several local places. There's even like a WNC Regional Livestock Center that is working to help farmers and other animals that have been hit by all the flooding. And then they've got some other stuff like the, American Red Cross, AmeriCare's Emergency Response Team, Salvation Army of the Carolinas, Baptists on a Mission, so on and so forth. They've all got, there's links and everything in there. My guess is that all of these, I'm fairly certain, are like on the up and up. So you can look and find and see. They've all been, at least according to what Ben was saying, he said they've all been verified. So they're all like actual relief help folks. But anyway, and Tommy is recommending to go to the Salvation Army before the Red Cross, because apparently the Salvation Army also is an opportunity, because apparently if you want to get things to the people in need right now, if you give it to the Red Cross, they send it to sorting centers, and 99% of it never gets to the people who need it. So there you go. just a bunch of different things going on, of course, with all of that. So if you are able, obviously, please go ahead and donate. If you can't, and then the least you can do is, of course, give a prayer to the people that are over there. My understanding is the death toll has now reached over 100. It was 95 earlier, but now it's at 100 or over 100. I don't know the exact count, which is, of course, heartbreaking for everybody. Hopefully, we're going to hear from Buddy soon. I only know of electronic ways to reach him, so. If he's without power, it's not going to matter anyway. Or at least not until after he gets things back and rolling. So let's just hope that everything's all right. Okay. So enough about that, about the hurricane. That's just heartbreaking, but there it is. So, anyway. All right. Okay. So apparently I just got an update from, we have another one, another potential storm out in the Caribbean that is kind of following the same path that Helene did. So we'll just have to watch that. All right, let's go ahead and get this going. Tonight's pledge is going to be led by the NJCY something. I always screw it up. But it's a youth camp, girls youth camp band. It's a girls camp band. It's a youth camp that Outlaw Dogs ran over the summer. But anyway, it's the girls band that did it, that put it together. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hats if you have them. Otherwise, place your hand over your hearts and let's follow along in the Pledge of Allegiance, done with a drum beat to it right here, following with the girls camp band.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah!
All right, and I appreciate them for submitting that in here. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance done here on the program, all you have to do is record yourself doing it in your style, take that audio file, stick it in your email client, and send it off to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And that'll, of course, get to me, and then I'll get you into the rotation. All right. We've got a couple of things that I want to get out of the way. Apparently, there's been some internal polling in Michigan that is causing some concern for the Democrats with regards to Harris and Walz. Walz, Harris, Walz, whatever you want to call them. Harry Walz, I don't know. Anyway, right here in Axios, yes, that is a left-wing newspaper. That's why I did it. Representative Alyssa Slotkin warns that Harris is actually underwater in Michigan. She is a Democrat from Michigan. She warned donors last week that internal polling for her Senate campaign shows Vice President Kamala Harris is underwater in Michigan, according to a video clip obtained by Axios. Why does it matter? Well, of course, winning Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania is Harris's easiest path to victory. Like I've always said on this program over the course of the last couple of weeks, and maybe even a little bit longer than that, Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, I'm telling you, 90% of the time in the 25,000 per day simulations that are run, 90% of the time, Pennsylvania picks the right winner. So is a bellwether state. So that is a key state, very key for both sides. That's why they're doing a lot of stuff there. But anyway, so there we go. And if President Trump sweeps the Sun Belt, he would only need to pick up one of those blue wall states in order to win the election. So, and it's looking like he's about ready to sweep the Sun Belt states. All of that being said, though, keep in mind that she could be saying this just to try and kick up more donors. Because, again, she mentioned it to donors. She might be trying to get them scaring them into donating. That's kind of what they do. You know, Democrats lie. They lie often. In fact, they lie about their lies. And they lie about lying about their lies. That's all they do is lie. So anyway. That being said, again, she had a quote where it was during a virtual fundraiser on Wednesday with Senator Cory Booker. You know, I am Spartacus guy, but anyway, she said, "I'm not feeling my best right now about where we are on Kamala Harris in a place like Michigan." So she said that we have her underwater in our polling. And, of course, the spokespeople did not respond to requests for comments from Axios with regards to this revelation. Well, it's not really all that surprising. I mean, there are a few other things that are other polls that are coming out that are showing similar things. Here in red state, there's some new swing state polling that brings more good news for Trump and a big warning for Harris right here in the interactive polls, which comes out on X. You're not following them on X, it's kind of pretty cool to go ahead and do that. They post and they update based on different polls that are out there. In this particular case, they have an electoral map that is showing that Trump is going to pick up 290 electoral votes versus Harris's 248 in the latest Atlas Intel polling, which has a 538 rank of a 2.7 out of 3.0, meaning that they are fairly accurate and good at what they do. And it's one of the, apparently Atlas Intel is like one of the most accurate polls back in 2020 for this. But this Michigan up by 3.4, Pennsylvania up, Trump up 2.9, Wisconsin, Trump 1.5, Arizona, Trump up 1.2. Georgia, Trump up 0.6. And in North Carolina, this is where Harris takes over at 2.4. And then they also list Nevada and the rest. But yeah, so things are starting to look, according to this electoral map that they have out. There it is. They're showing that based on the polling, and this is, of course, directly from that poll. So it's not taking into account any other polls or any other things that are going on. But according to this right here, it's showing that Trump will pull Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona out of the swing states, and Harris will pick up Nevada and North Carolina, according to them. I'm not exactly that sure of that. Again, but hey, we're 37 or whatever days out from this, so anything can happen in the next 30 plus days. Yeah, we'll just have to kind of see. But anyway, there you have it. That's what's going on for that. Now, so one thing that has got me interested is that CNN, for whatever reason, has hired somebody that apparently is, I'm not going to say, because I don't know anything about his politics, but he's starting to hold some of these on-air personalities, these supposed CNN analysts and journalists. He's starting to hold their feet to the fire, and I got to tell you, I'm kind of liking it. Keep in mind, not enough for me to actually go and watch CNN because I'm not going to. But this guy who is, where is it? What's his name? His last name is Jennings, but Scott Jennings. So Scott Jennings, was on a panelist with a couple of other people, one of them being, of course, Jake Tapper, who is the host. And, yeah, let's just say this guy is, he has got some serious chops and potential cojones to be saying this on CNN. But hey, let's go ahead and take a listen in and see what he's talking about here. Very, very interesting.
Donald Trump. I think what I've noticed about all of this is there's never been a time that I can recall before now where the vice presidential picks have been so consequential to the actual top of the ticket. You look at J.D. Vance was supposed to somehow expand Donald Trump's reach. Instead, he actually has done more damage, harm than good. But you look at Governor Walz, the reason why smart pick, the reason why he was picked is to bridge that cultural divide, to reach out to constituencies that the Democratic Party's had problems, reaching: moderate Republicans, disaffected Republicans, independent Republicans. He's signaling to a constituency that you can vote for this ticket. So he's incredibly conseconsequential to Kamala Harris.
I heard a chortle from your friend Scott Jennings over here.
I'm sorry. What you expect from Scott?
What are you chortling about?
Oh, well, first of all, I don't find them to be consequential. Second of all, Walz is a buffoon. I'm sorry. This guy, he's the only school teacher in America who brags that none of his students can get into an Ivy League school. He's had one consequential press interaction with our Dana Bash, who asked him about the fabrications in his own resume, and his answer was essentially, me no understand words good. I mean, he's a buffoon. He's on a free ride for running under Harris. He gets very little press. They don't let him talk to the press for a reason. I want one thing out of this debate. I want J.D. Vance to go out there and get under his skin. He has legendary hot, short temper. A lot of governors do, but apparently he does. I want J.D. Vance to go out there and have him explain why he is denigrating J.D. Vance's story. Small town America ends up making something better out of his life, which is something we should want for every kid.
What I hope Walz will do is to use J.D. Vance's words against him. Remember, he used to tell the truth about Donald Trump. He called him America's Hitler. He said he thoroughly failed to deliver on an economic plan, that he's a cultural heroine. So that's what I expect him to do, which is to make this point about J.D. Vance. You can't trust this guy. He's a fraud. Now he's singing a different tune. He's just like Donald Trump. You can't trust him.
So one thing I just...
So, as you can see, they had a difference of opinion for sure. But, yeah, I kind of like this Scott Jennings guy. This isn't the only time that he has done this. Here recently, these are first appearances, because, again, I don't watch CNN on a regular basis, but this is some of his first appearances, and this guy he's hitting it. I don't know where they got him from, but man, he is right on the nose with a lot of this stuff. So yeah, and that's traditionally, traditionally CNN is a completely left-leaning organization. I mean, it's not called the Clinton News Network for nothing. But anyway, so yeah, there's just all kinds of, things that are going to possibly come out in tomorrow night's debate, which again, by the way, I am going to, right after this program tomorrow night, I should be carrying that debate for you in a simulcast. Hopefully that will be able to happen. It's on CBS. It doesn't look like it's going to be behind a paywall for them. So, and there are a couple other outlets. So if you want to watch with me and maybe get some commentary if they break halfway through, like the other ones, yeah, you can come and watch after my show tomorrow night for that. What I'm definitely interested in seeing tomorrow night is I want to see if Vance can somehow bring in the whole stolen valor situation and that kind of thing. So I think it's going to be a fiery one. I think I think it's going to be a fiery one. But anyway, now this particular debate, I mean, again, just like all debates, this debate's probably going to be inconsequential when it comes to actually changing people's minds. I honestly, I'm starting to believe, holy, we're 30 plus days out from this, and completely, everybody has kind of already made their bones, their thoughts, they've already, decided on who they are going to vote for the most part. And I think we're actually just voting, the middle of the road folks, the independents who are still undecided, I think are just they're fighting over a small amount, not a lot of people. Speaking of which, if you are in a state that allows early voting, I would highly recommend that you go and do that. Vote early. And if you have to on election day, get yourself a provisional ballot or something, if you have to or whatever. But the point is make sure that you vote early, because I'm telling you, especially if the polls start showing that she is failing to meet the requirements, there will be all kinds of shenanigans votes election night. So yeah. All right. I talked about it a couple days ago. I think it was late last week I mentioned it. Here we are. Tomorrow, the next biggest thing is going to be the East Coast and Gulf Coast shipping longshoremen union strike. And yes, they have reportedly voted to strike. They have reported to strike at midnight tonight. And that's going to happen it's Eastern time over there. So in just a little over 3 hours and 38 minutes, I'm guessing, they are planning on striking. Now, when I talked about this before, I mentioned that it was, I wasn't sure whether or not the West Coast was included in this. It actually turns out that there are two separate longshoremen's unions. One covers the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. The other one covers the West Coast. The West Coasters had already negotiated their new contract 2 years ago in 2022, in May of 2022. And so, the West Coast is still potentially, because I have seen unions walk out in solidarity with other unions that are striking. So let's hope that doesn't happen, because if it does, that's going to really put us into a serious bind. However, that being said, there are some things such as food that comes up from Ecuador, bananas, things like that. There will be some shortages in some particular items. I know car parts are another one that comes through, even some stuff from China that comes into those Gulf Coast and East Coast locations, because it's a lot easier to ship them from them. It's a lot easier to ship them into those ports and then have those ports take them to, Detroit, for an example. But anyway, they basically, I'm just telling you, get ready to buckle down. So, the press is pointing and holding to this idea that, and by the way, this is out of CNBC, which is talking about the strike looming with no talks scheduled. So here's the thing. What a lot of people don't understand is there are two sticking points here. The first, which is normally pretty obvious, I mean, it's money. The dock workers want more money. The second one is automation. And this one, I think, is the more likely to let this thing stretch out. And the reason being is because, as we all know, automation tends to cut back on workers. And as I've said on this program, the more automated something actually gets, the less workers you actually need in order to operate them, the more profitable things are. And that's just because of the fact that you don't have to pay somebody, you don't have to pay their wages. You don't have to pay their medical. You don't have to pay for lost time and injuries and all kinds of other things that would come associated with having a human being actually do the work. The challenge here, of course, is that the unions feel that right now is their best time because they kind of have the White House in particular over a barrel. And the reason why they have the White House over the barrel is, think about this. Joe Biden doesn't want to necessarily get involved. Why doesn't Joe Biden want to get involved? Your guess is as good as mine. My best guess, though, is that he's kind of wanting to stick it to Harris. This is a way to allow him, or let me correct myself. That's not Biden doing that. That might be Jill Biden doing this. But they don't want to get involved. Harris doesn't want to get involved either, because if the White House itself, and think about this, if the White House itself decides to break it, like they did break this like they did with the union, okay, the railroad union, then what's going to end up happening is that means that Harris is not, is essentially not pro-worker like she claims to be. So yeah, this is kind of interesting, an interesting dynamic, because something like this could actually tank her as well. Because the American people in general might be saying, hey, Kamala, you need to fix this. This is like your first, if you think about this, this is kind of like the first crisis that Kamala Harris would have essentially 100% total control for anyone with a working noggin. Because we all know that Joe Biden is just gone. He's lost it. He's not anywhere, gone. But anyway, I honestly, I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go, but I have a feeling that this is going to kind of impact the election, as far as that goes. So we'll just kind of have to see how things work out in the long run with these folks. But hopefully you guys on the East Coast and some of us on the West, because of course our ports are going to go into overtime probably, to be able to start shipping stuff eastward. But anyway. Okay. So some of my rumblers who came in a little late, just really quick. I have not heard from Buddy. Buddy Weiser is one of our Rumble guys. He's a long-time Whiskey Warrior P1 from way back when this thing was like just barely getting off the ground. And I have not heard from him. I know that North Carolina got hit. Most of it was in Western North Carolina, but that doesn't mean that they can't be impacting them on the eastern side of North Carolina in terms of things like electrical power outages and that kind of stuff. So anyway, Amy asks, why aren't the Western longshoremen striking? Well, it's because they're a different union. They're not the same union. But that doesn't mean that they can't go ahead and strike in solidarity. They may decide to do that if this thing takes forever. So, I mean, it could impact everybody, but at least for right now, I'm not hearing anything out of the Western Union. Yeah, I had to slow that down a little bit, but out of the Western Longshoremen's Union, I haven't heard anything about them doing anything in solidarity for that. So there you go. All right. So one thing that has happened is the masks are off, folks. The masks are completely off on the left. I mean, you've had Hillary Clinton talk about how she wants to throw people in jail because they are putting out misinformation and disinformation. And she even talks about things like, how it was her Pizzagate thing. You notice she did not, in her interview, I noticed that she did not even mention the Steele dossier that she paid for to do the whole Russian collusion hoax. Now, she did mention that Russia has continually tried to interfere in our elections, which we know that they have. I mean, foreign interference in our elections seems to be a common problem or common issue. But the thing about it is that there's now more Democrats that are stepping forward and are basically saying we need to toss certain aspects that are continually considered American overboard. Now, right now, they're attacking the First Amendment in particular, but I've also seen a couple articles talk about getting rid of or revamping the Constitution. I'll get to that in just a second, but first, let me tell you about tonight's sponsor, which I missed in the beginning. TGRN, True Grit Roots Network, can be found on the web at tgrn.net. And we have a 24/7 blues channel called TGRN Blues that has fantastic on-air personalities, one of which is our very own Vinnie Marini. And Vinnie Marini hosts a live, not pre-recorded, but live interviews with artists and musicians that you should know. It's going on right now. It's a 3-hour program. It starts at 8 p.m. Eastern and goes all the way to 11 p.m. So after you get done listening to me and talking to me, you can head on over to tgrn.net and listen to Vinnie Marini interview some of these fantastic musicians. These are live, uncut, and unscripted conversations with these musicians that you should know. The show began back in February of 2010 with the express goal of giving musicians a voice of their own, interviews not colored by a journalist's impressions. As of September 5th of 2023, and of course that was, it's a year ago, there are over 660 shows and over 2,500 interviews that he has performed. All the interviews can be found at musiconthecouch.com. That's musiconthecouch.com. As they transitioned, of course, into TGRN, not all the files are accessible, but if you have a specific interview, you could let him know. You could email Vinny at showbooking@musiconthecouch.com, and he can send you the MP3 file. Now, obviously, like I said, it airs only on Monday, and it started at 8 p.m. Central Time. Oh, 8 p.m. Central, which, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It's 1 hour later. So he'll start at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. So it'll be right after this program. And you can go ahead and listen to those interviews. He does a really good job with the interviews. And of course they play music that the musicians, have performed and have created for you and so on and so forth. You can listen directly through your browser at tgrn.net, or you can download our application on your phone, whether it be a iPhone or Android based operating system. Also, too, if you have the Live 365 app, the Odyssey, that's AUDACY app, or the iHeartRadio app, you can find us in their catalog of digital radio stations. That's TGRN Blues, the station, the one genre station of TGRN, True Grit Roots Network, which can be found at tgrn.net. We are based out of Austin, Texas, and we do appreciate your support. All right. So, once again, I was telling you about free speech in America in particular. Well, you know, that guy, John Kerry, known as Lurch, he was at the WEF. Which forum, which one was this? He was, it was just at the WEF, and he flat out called for suppression or censorship of free speech. Let's take a listen to this guy and what he has to say. Oh, man. I always get bummed whenever this happens. Give me just a second here. It's like it loses it. Don't know why, but it's like it loses it. Anyway, Here it is.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's no, the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't a fact are kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree. And people go, and people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera. But look, if people go to only one source and the source they go to is sick and, has an agenda and they're putting out disinformation, our First Amendment stands as a major block to the ability to be able to just, hammer it out of existence. So what we need is to win the ground, win the right to govern by hopefully having, winning enough votes that you're free to be able to implement change. Now, obviously, there are some people in our country who are prepared to implement change in other ways. And
so
that's
you're
really
questioning
dangerous.
really if democracy can survive unregulated social media.
I think democracies are very challenged right now and have not proven they can move fast enough or big enough to deal with the challenges that we are facing. And to me, that is part of what this race, this election is all about. Will we break the fever in the United States?
So he wants to break the fever of outlets like myself, along with a whole bunch of others, and social media. They didn't have a problem when before Elon Musk bought X. These guys, man, I'm telling you, Elon bought X, and Rumble started, and Parler started, and Truth Social started, and oh my gosh, these people have lost their little sandbox playgrounds that they can manipulate and control the media narratives. They've lost it all. And they are still kicking and screaming about it. Well, the reason why is because you're starting to realize, the American people are starting to realize that these people, these morons up at the top, who are attempting to censor free speech, are actually trying to push on propaganda. And they keep getting caught by people such as myself and all of the other conservative social media folks that are out there. Yeah. So, Kamala Harris talks about it. Tim Walz talks about it. I played you Tim Walz's comment about, hate speech and stuff, that isn't free speech and so on and so forth. And yeah, anyway, these people, the mask is off. I'm telling you, folks, it is completely off. And in fact, here's Bill Gates saying the exact same or very similar thing, I should say.
We should have free speech, but if you're inciting violence, if you're causing people not to take vaccines, where are those boundaries that even the U.S. Should, have rules? And then if you have rules, what is it? Is there some AI that encodes those rules because you have billions of activity and, if you catch it a day later, the harm is done. We should have free speech, but if you're inciting...
Yeah, we should have free speech. That's it. That's where it stops, Bill. That's where it stops. We should have free speech. That's it. But Bill, of course, did you notice that he threw in the idea of vaccines? He got pissed because nobody wants to take his vaccines anymore. Well, the vaccines that weren't vaccines, and I'm probably going to get a freaking another ding here because of medical misinformation, but the vaccines that didn't work. Yeah. well, it's not just the leftist heads that are talking about it too. This piece in the New Yorker, which, by the way, I put in the show notes. You can go there. It's not behind a paywall yet, but you can go and check this thing out. Oh my gosh. It's full of some misinformation, disinformation about our founding and things of that. We'll cover a couple of them here in just a minute here. But the title, of course, is it time to torch the Constitution? No. Flat out, no, it's not. And it never will be. These morons. But anyway, so, here's the first freaking line. All Republican governments live in fear of the man on the white horse. A Republican government like ours is a system of rules designed to prevent any one person or faction from hijacking the democratic decision-making process. The person on the white horse doesn't respect the democratic decision-making process, is not a product of that process, and has no stake in its survival. The person on the white horse rides into town and says, "Who needs rules? Let me take care of everything." And the public, glad to simplify life, or possibly dazzled by the promise of a glorious future, lets the rider take charge. Rules that no one enforces are just so much paper. Well, I'm sorry, New Yorker magazine, but that is exactly what the Democrats are attempting to do. That's what the Marxist leftist Democrats are trying to do. Right here. That's it. Now, it continues by saying, but Republican governments also live in fear of the man on the street. Political decisions can't be trusted entirely to the will of a bare majority of voters, in part because most voters tend to be relatively uninformed about politics. Actually, that's a large part, not just a small part. But anyway, back to the piece. But more important, because nothing prevents majorities, once in power, from oppressing minorities. A government under the complete control of a popularly elected majority is just as dangerous as a government under the complete control of a guy on a horse. Yep, that's why we're a republic, not a pure democracy. Pure democracy is is basically majority rules. All right, real quick, off the rail step for just a second. Mark said that a patient at the hospital he's working at said hello to all of us. Well, hello back. There you go. We got a wave back. Anyway. So anyway, that's just the beginning of this article. And it starts to go through, it starts talking about the Constitution. It starts talking about, the individual states having their constitution and sort of talks about our government and how it's been put together and everything else. Now, the thing about it is that they ask the question and everyone agrees. So here, everyone agrees that if the Constitution says you can't do it, it can't be done. The question is, who tells us what the Constitution says you can and cannot do? Now, they call out, the writer here calls out the Supreme Court as being the answer, but I say it's the people. The Supreme Court is just one leg of the three-legged government stool, and it's the people like myself who are educated on the Constitution and its background and where it came from and what it's supposed to do and the Federalist Papers and the Declaration of Independence and I could go on. But we who understand it and realize where the founders intended on things and how things are supposed to operate, we're the ones that would be who tells you what the Constitution says you can and cannot do. The Constitution itself tells you what you can and cannot do if you bother to read it and comprehend what it is saying. However, they continue on and they say this is why when people are unhappy with the way the political system is working, they tend to blame one of two things: the Constitution or the Supreme Court, which they shouldn't blame either one for their lack of knowledge and understanding. But anyway, those same people will argue that either the Constitution is flawed and needs to be changed. I argue it's their understanding of the Constitution that's flawed. And then, of course, they carry on, or that the court is misinterpreting the Constitution and needs to be changed, which happens when you have an activist court. Continues on and says, when people are really unhappy, they argue both. So what they're doing is they're actually reviewing, in this article, they're reviewing a book by Erwin Chermaninsky. And this guy is the dean of a law school at the University of California at Berkeley, which right there just tells you, I mean, just straight up, right there just tells you that he's already wrong. Anyway, apparently he's highly respected in academic circles as a scholar of constitutional law, but his name got recognition in much wider circles last spring, in which he hosted a dinner for law students at his house. One of them produced a microphone and an amplifier and started giving a pro-Palestine speech. Cherminsky's wife, also a Berkeley law professor, grabbed the student and tried to wrestle the microphone away from her. And in the video, which someone was recording, of course, but in the video, they can be Chermaninsky, I don't even know how to pronounce it. But anyway, the original professor was heard shouting, "This is my house. The First Amendment does not apply." So he's apparently written a couple of books. He published a book called Free Speech on Campus, which argued or urged expansive protections for student speech. He also published a book called The Case Against the Supreme Court, which was basically blaming the Supreme Court. And that was back in 2014. And then he also, he pointed out several instances where the Supreme Court struck down federal laws regulating businesses, so on and so forth. He goes on and, he talks about a whole bunch of different decisions and stuff as a part of the book. But his most recent one, and in the book, of course, he wasn't very critical. He had very little to talk about that he was critical of the Constitution, but he actually was praising the difficulty in amending it. And apparently there's a website too. Jill Lepore's Amend Project website has almost 12,000 constitutional amendments that have been introduced into Congress since 1789. And Congress has only ratified 33 by the required 2/3 majority, and then only 27 were ratified by the 3/4 of the states, which is the way it's supposed to go. But anyway, it continues on where his new book that he's got out now is called No Democracy Lasts Forever, How the Constitution Threatens the United States. Once again, this is coming from a guy in Berkeley. No surprise. He puts down that the framers of the Constitution went too far in preventing amendments. And as a result, we are now stuck with a set of rules which not only makes addressing political problems harder, but is itself responsible for many of the political problems that we need to address. This is false. I'm going to tell you why this is false. If the federal government had stuck to be within its constitutional boundaries and stayed within its constitutional boundaries, we wouldn't be in this problem. We wouldn't have all the issues that we have. Now, he continues on a couple of other things, and one of the things that I've noticed about the writer of the article is the fact that they don't seem to understand where the Senate sits in the Constitution as a representative of the states, because of the fact they point out in terms of the Senate. Let's see, where is it talking about here? Oh, I lost it. Anyway, it does talk about the Senate and how each state has 2 senators and how that's more, based on quote unquote population, that that California shouldn't have the same number of senators as, say, Wyoming because of population. Well, that just points out the moron who wrote this article really doesn't understand that the Senate originally was the state representative within the federal government, that the senators were not selected by the people, that they were actually selected by the state legislatures to represent the state interests in the federal government. The people are the ones that thereby are made by population, are what's in the House of Representatives. And that's why Congress actually has 2 houses. But apparently this person writing this article, or possibly even the guy writing the book, may not understand this. Now, they also, of course, attack the Electoral College. Again. In which case they mention, again, because these people are morons, they mention again that the popular vote must be what elects the president. And that is not true. In the Constitution, it specifically states that they want to avoid the whole idea. Well, it doesn't state this in the Constitution, but if you read about how this was put together, they wanted to avoid the idea that the popular vote could actually vote in the president. The president was to be elected by the Electoral College, or the electors, because technically college is kind of just a misnomer. But they wanted the president to be elected by the electoral system because of the fact that they were strictly afraid of a pure democracy and of the rule by the population, the popular vote. They were afraid of that. And again, it is in the book, by the way. It is in the book where they talk about it. So, yeah. This guy is off his rocker. But anyway, I would encourage you to go and read this article, just because of the fact that in order to understand and get in the mindset of these leftist lunatics that are attempting to essentially, that are attempting to usurp the Constitution, is basically because they don't have a intimate grasp and knowledge of the Constitution, that they don't understand why it was put together. They don't understand the reasonings behind it and the sheer brilliance in the men that created it. And they continue on, or he continues on with all kinds of other things with it as well. But like I said, it's a fairly long article, and yeah, so I would suggest that they that you go and read this so that you at least can get an idea of what the intent and where these people are coming from, because they, again, this is all because of a lack of understanding. They don't bother to even look at some of the accompanying documents like the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, the James Madison Notes of the Convention. These are all, by the way, these are all reference materials that I have here at my fingertips and availability. But anyway. So yeah, they are out in force. They want to eliminate the Constitution. They want to eliminate our rights, and they definitely want the Constitution gone. And here's another example as to why they want everything to be their way or the highway. Here in the Daily Wire, and this just broke today, the Justice Department sues Alabama over efforts to remove non-citizens from voter rolls. Alabama was looking, and that they apparently filed for the suit. The Justice Department filed the suit on Friday. And they are suing Alabama over its efforts to clean up its voter rolls and ensure that non-citizens are not registered to vote. The Justice Department is saying that its actions came too close to an election. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was too close to an election to actually fix something that's broken. Anyway, Secretary of State Wes Allen announced last month the effort to remove non-citizens from the state's voter rolls. In the lawsuit, the DOJ said that this effort violated federal law because the National Voter Registration Act, which, by the way, that's the 1993 Motor Voter Act, says that it restricts actions that states can take within 90 days of a federal election. Well, I hate to tell you this, dude, but I actually think the National Voter Registration Act may, in this particular case, violate the Constitution because the state legislatures and the state legislatures themselves, outside of a couple of things in the Constitution that are reserved for Congress to be able to do, the state legislatures are the ones that handle all of the voting. These guys, they're just pushing and pressing for the Constitution and the constitutionality of things to be challenged in the Supreme Court. Apparently on August 13th, 84 days before the November 5th election, Allen said that Alabama officials had identified up to 3,251 people on Alabama's voter rolls with non-citizen identification numbers assigned to them by the Department of Homeland Security. In response to the findings, Allen sent letters to those people to give them a chance to update their information to discover if they had become naturalized citizens since entering the country, or if they should be taking off the rolls because they were not U.S. citizens. Allen said that the federal government had refused to answer requests for information on foreign nationals living in his state, which prompted his initiative. So, yeah. This fight is not over, people. It is definitely not over. All right, I have a couple other articles I'll probably carry over to tomorrow because I am now at the end of my time. So that is it for me for tonight. Do me a favor, if you enjoy the program and haven't done so already, please head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free, and Rumble is the free speech alternative to YouTube. But what you can do, and I think interesting. All right. So what you can do is sign up over there. It's free. And once you do, and you're signed up, please, and signed in, I should say, please search up the American Perspective channel. And when you are there, hit that green follow button. Also, as well, before you take off, make sure you hit those thumbs up buttons, those likes, those rumbles, whatever you want to call them, for all of my platforms, because that more exposure for my videos. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening. Prayers for all of the people who have been affected by that nasty, nasty hurricane. And we will see you. We will see you tomorrow. Oh, before I take off, though, I do have one thing. So Coco over on Rumble, her husband apparently has a birthday today. So I guess I am obligated, now that I know, I am obligated to sing happy birthday to him. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Coco's husband. Happy birthday to you. All right. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your evening. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.